Welcome back, you filthy exiles, and we've got a different build here. Now, one could argue that this is not a good build, but one could also argue that this is also done at T3 Ubers. So it's up to you to decide. The reason why I built this wasn't necessarily because I wanted to make the best build in the world, but I actually wanted to tackle some of the harder skills and see if you could balance around them. You sort of can, and with the changes to the bosses, I would say that this build's actually probably more competent than others with the one-shot mechanics. But yeah, pretty much where we're at is we had to re-roll from the Witch Hunter. Originally, we tried to do this with the Witch Hunter, and it could be viable if you can get enough DPS in your weapon, and if I could have gotten the second talisman of Cyrus. And yes, that is an 11 div talisman with a 3 div darkness and throne. And there's a fair bit of currency that's sort of, backed up into this build, and we sort of lucked out with some of the crafts because we managed to sort of craft the hammer, and it was pretty wild. But pretty much where we got to was we have like a ton of armor sitting on the vicinity of about 31.4 thousand. We don't really use scavenged armor on this either. We have about 50,000 that's applied to elemental damage. We have a bit of a breakpoint here though. Our fire res is a bit low, and sometimes that can get us down, and we do get to about 68 or 69% chaos res, which isn't perfect. Now, total life recovery, we're just shy of 600 per second idle, and then once it cranks up, and that's based on, we don't have Defiance of Destiny in this, by the way, that's based on Made to Last, then that basically hits up anywhere close to 17 to 1800 as I'm taking damage. So there's a fair bit going on in that respect. Now, I just noticed a wasted point here that we could reallocate to somewhere else in the tree. And we might do that, I guess, at a certain point in time, maybe put it into some more armor or something like that. But pretty much where we're at is, so you basically, to map, you're just going to like Volcanic fissure around. You're then going to use Sunder to trigger the fissure, and that's just going to do a lot more damage. And then basically when we get to bosses, we got a combination of Mace Strike, and within Mace Strike, we're actually using Volcanic Eruption. Now, sort of, I wish this worked with Volcanic Fissure, and it doesn't make sense that it doesn't. So if there's anyone from GGG that's looking at this, like, that would actually make this really viable. A note on the tree that would also help, I guess, with this would be this Tribal Fury node as well, potentially. But I haven't really tested that with this build at this stage. But that would help with this build, I guess, with overlapping splash damage. Based on the POB, I guess, looking at numbers-wise, because I've pulled the numbers in and sort of done them, and we'll talk about config, we get to about 184,000 damage with Mace Strike, which is quite high for Mace Strike, which is why we can drop Ubers with it, right? And then Volcanic Eruption says like 4,000 per projectile. We do quite a number of projectiles. If we have a look at our Ancestral Cry, then our Volcanic Eruption is like 17.5 thousand, and we do a ton of projectiles with this, which is why it does so much damage. I guess something to note is like the damage scaling on Volcanic Eruption should realistically be the same as on Ancestral Cry, or maybe just like 80% of that or 60% of that or something like that. That being said, like, am I complaining? Not really. It sort of works. I think the biggest issue with this build is it's sort of endurance. It requires a bit of endurance charge stacking realistically to be able to get the most out of Ancestral Cry. And there's just too many other things in the tree that just trump the value of endurance charges right now. Unless you're specifically like blocking the consumption of, then it's pretty useless to take endurance charges. And don't like perfectly quote me on that, because obviously there's probably builds out there that are using them to their fullest, but I just don't see the big advantage of running them with a build like this at this stage. And so I've chosen not to. Now, originally I was going to go the glory stacking route. Again, same principle. Like, I feel like the Ascendancy needs to allow for this, as opposed, like, and there is one that allows for glory with banners, but it's not really like, there's no real big damage advantage to this, because there's just so much other stuff in the tree that is far better to take from a defense, and then attribute stacking standpoint and stuff like that. Speed, armor, all those things are much more valuable, I'm finding. And the other problem is I can't really map that in POB to test it before I test it too. So unless you're playing like a dedicated Warcry build and Ancestral boosting, I assume things like this boost everything to do with Ancestral Cry. But unless you can fully sustain it, then it's just not really very fruitful. And the big problem with the sustain is just around like to be able to trigger it, you need to be able to ignite enemies constantly. And currently the way that we get around this is somewhat of a crude way, which is we sort of just apply fire damage through fire attunement on our mace strike, and then we just scale up anything that we can with ignite magnitude at the behest of it, basically. So we've got ignite magnitude, or flammability magnitude, sorry, down here, because you need to build 100 stacks of flammability, which we do pretty quickly, arguably. But yeah, there's just some like stark limitations with how the setup is. I feel like this would work like better with the Infernalists somehow, and then you'd really be looking at like ignite builds and stuff like that. But for the sake of this, it works fine, right? It does the job. We just can't keep Ancestral Cry up for very long without endurance charges. And to be honest with you, like, we really need a way to generate consistent endurance charges outside of just armor break, because armor break is so incredibly limiting. And there probably are a few items in the game yet, but I feel like this sort of build setup is more like a Juggernaut build than it is a Warrior build at this stage. And this Ascendancy just doesn't make sense running on a Warrior as opposed to like a Jug that would be endurance charge stacked. But anyway, there's just like a lot of limitations with it right now. But that being said, like, as an overall, it does good damage. Map clear is easy. Obviously, I'm gaining XP at level 91. And the reason for that is, you know, I'm able to basically just tank my way through maps. Clear's okay. Yeah, as an overall, like, it's just one of those all-rounder builds. Is it, like, worth the investment that it requires to get this sort of gear into the build? I don't know. It's up to you to determine that. I have had fun playing it, though. And, yeah, so do I regret it? Absolutely not. We got it to Ubers. That's the goal. Next build we're going to do is going to be Poison Artillery Ballista, or whatever the Ballista got changed to. Siege Ballista, sorry. But yeah, at this point, like, as a tank character, this is definitely within my wheelhouse of play. So anyway, like, overall, build's pretty cool. We have Hammer of the Gods there just for a bit of added damage. If we have a look at the tree as well, and the POB will be in the description, basically our Hammer of the Gods hits for like 442, which isn't like very big compared to other builds. It's more like a convenience item, just does a bit of extra damage. But that being said, Mace Strike is a big damage dealer right now at this stage. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And Sunder does like 250,000 DPS, something like that. And Volcanic Fissure obviously holds its own too. It's ramped up to about like 50 to 60,000. So like, all the damage stats on this build are quite good. Like, you could do crazier stuff with this build if I had more currency, but at this point it's doing its job. So yeah. Anyway, let's get into the build config. Okay, we're going to try and bring back the config page these days. So pretty much where we're at is all endgame. We have endurance charges when we get them, but you know, it's an armor break scenario. 30 rage. We're surrounded. We use the helm constricted command. Banners down. We generate banner glory really quickly, and part of that is because of the one of the lineage gems they added in. War banner. Duresso's Passion. So basically 50% less glory to use. I wish they applied that to Ancestral Cry. That would make a lot more sense, and a lot of other skills. But I can see where it would be abused, but it would be good to have it in. Wind Dancer stacks. We always like stack 3 stacks of Wind Dancer, so banner down. Wind Dancer stacks at 3. No other changes in here. We've got burning enemies. We've got ignited enemies. Do sort of heavy stun enemies pretty consistently too, because the stun applies from all the projectiles. Armor is broken. Yeah, we hit really hard, so we break armor. We shock enemies because we have lightning damage on our weapon as well, so we do clear up to, I think, 20% shock. And I think in there's some intimidate from our Warcry as well. So yeah, we do a fair bit of damage. If we took that out, we lose a little bit of damage, but we mainly lose defense if we take away intimidate, which is why our Warcry is so powerful. But currently, like, all we're really deficient here is fire max hit. Everything else is sitting at about 15,000. We've got 26.9 thousand EHP if we take Intimidate out, 22.8k. So we're pretty damn tanky as an overall. We've got huge amounts of regeneration. We're nearly at 3,000 HP. Biggest issue with the Warrior right now is HP stacking is just so limiting versus like ES. But armor itself is very strong. So if we had more HP I feel like if it was easier to get to like 4,000 or 4,500 or even 5,000, like in POE1, with the armor that we've got, you could actually build really tanky toons, which would be scaled, and I feel like that's going to be in the next patch, but we'll talk about that in the videos that I'm going to put out tomorrow. But anyway, that's it for the config tree. Okay, so from the gearing perspective, constricted command, we've just got a Takati soul core in that. We run just like a really big iron hammer. Now we get +6 from the perfect battle essence, but the other thing here is we need attack speed, and also we also run the alacrity or alacrity greater runes as well. So we actually focus more on attack speed because that's what throttles up Mace Strike more than flat damage. At least that's what I've tested so far. We got really lucky with an Ami, so we got 45 to Spirit and a ton of attributes. I'm very well aware of the price of this amulet would be quite high because there's a lot of T1 and T2 rolls on this that are pretty useful. Big shield, pretty much armor applies to elemental damage is what we need, and big armor and big life. And then our chests, we're actually running that with Tekrod's Gaze, which gives us a ton of life regeneration. It's not a very high roll in the implicit, but, you know, armor applies to elemental damage, resistances, all the good stuff that we need. Rings, we pretty much want fizz damage and fire damage on every ring, as well as resistances and strength, and chaos res where you can get it. It's just very expensive to get these things sorted. Gloves, attack speed, flat fire damage if you can get it, and armor applies elemental damage. Again, very expensive. Belt with darkness and throning, and you want to target for talismans and Cyrus. So we're short 16% attack speed right now, which would amp our damage up pretty significantly. So you would see a pretty big like pump up, and we'd probably scale out the speed off the hammer for the belt, and then just do tons and tons of damage with Mace Strike and our Volcanic Eruption. But we're short one right now. Boots, 30% movement speed, life regen, chaos res, and life. I would like to get better boots. These are not ideally the best boots, and they're a bit deficient, but they got good amounts of armor. So anything that you can get, that's better than that. I haven't done the the Act 2 quest rewards yet, so don't quite, you know, we could get way better charms. So yeah, I'm a bit short on that one. In fact, we could get a ruby charm, which would then mean that we could take more fire damage, or any other more expensive charm than that. And then obviously melting maelstrom we use as well. Basically just, yeah, chaos damage. And then just any old flask. To be honest with you, my flask is pretty crap, so I haven't upgraded it since like level 50. So that's a shortcoming of mine on this build. That's just a sentiment to how tanky this build actually is. We're using a flask from like, what's that, like 40 levels ago, something, 41 levels ago. But yeah, anyway, overall, that's the main gearing. There's no weapon switch in this setup. It's all just is as it is. And yeah. Now, as for the gem setups in this one, so we pardon me, we use Mace Strike, so Fire Attunement, Rapid Attacks, Volcanic Eruption, it's a biggie, Rage 3, and Heft. Sunder, we use Fist of War 2, we use Elemental Armament 2, Rapid Attacks 2, Fire Attunement, and Fire Penetration. That was actually a big change that gave me a ton more damage. Volcanic Fissure, which is like our main driver through maps, which is Rapid Attacks 2, Elemental Armament 2, Branching Fissures 1, but I think we can get 2, which is way better. Fire Attunement and Rage 3. Ancestral Cry, Prolonged Duration 2, Elemental Armament 2, Fire Attunement, Nova Projectiles, which is how we do so much damage with it. Fire Penetration 2, which was a big game changer for the damage output. Hammer of the Gods, we run Fist of War 3, Heft, Heavy Swings, Fire Attunement, and Fire Penetration. Infernal Cry, Second Wind 2, Magnified Effect 2, Raging Cry, and Corrupting Cry. And Magnified Effect on a Herald of Ash, Magnified Effect, Fire Mastery, and Vitality 1. With War Banner, we run Prolonged Duration, Duresso's Passion, Deliberation, and Magnified Effect 1. Berserk, we're just going to run an Uhtred's Exodus because this just gives us flat 3 and we're not going to use anything else with this. And then finally, Wind Dancer, we're running Magnified Effect, Armor Break 3, Armor Explosion, Heft, and Life Leech 2. Now, as far as the tree with this one, I had to respec this around. So this tree is like not as optimized as I would like it, to be honest with you. But basically, we're coming into the stun build-up nodes here. We come and grab Smash. We could take these 2 points in here for melee damage, but I just don't see the benefit of that. And then we go into Sturdy Metal, into Relentless, go across into Mass Rejuvenation, because we do rely on the dichotomy between armor and life regeneration, so we do need this point. We come down here. I'm going to probably strip out these 2 points and put them elsewhere at this stage. I'm not sure where. We come all the way down, we grab Crushing Verdicts, we're then going to grab Made to Last, up into Overheating Blow and Fulmination. We need this because when we heavy stun an enemy, we do a ton more damage. Up into Blood Magic. Also notice like what we're running is Armor, Life Regeneration, Flammability, Magnitude, and any melee damage you can get. And then we'll come down, grab Brute Strength, pardon me. Giant's Blood, obviously, you want to rush to into Tempered Defenses. Then we're running the Surrounded Cluster nodes as well. Up into Incendiary to Last Stand, into Iron Reflexes with Leatherbound Gauntlets. Basically just doubles our armor on our gauntlets, which is pretty good. Into Gem Enthusiast, we grab Polymathy and also one of the reduced attribute nodes as well. Up into Sand in the Eyes, and then we finish with a few jewels in there too. I'll leave you guys to look at those in the POB. I do think we have a Heart of the Well as well. This is one that I was just able to get, but if you can get any other better one, then more power to you. It's whatever you can afford or whatever drops at this stage. Note we don't need Blade Catcher in this setup because we just don't need that much armor into the build. At this stage, we're just after a lot more damage at this point. Now, ascendancy wise, I did sort of play around with Crushing Impacts and Surprising Strength. Does do tons of damage. Like if I show you on the POB, right, if we stripped off the other points, or even if we keep them there, right, you're looking at like 86,000 more DPS. But the problem is your survivability just drops off through the wazoo, so it's not worth it based on the survivability. So then we run Mysterious Lineage and we run Stone Skin, and Hulking Form is pretty much our best setup with this. And that's it for the build. As an overall, its clear speed's good. Like, it's much better than my last build. My last build had better single target. This build has way better clear speed. But I can do Ubers. I can do everything in the end game. I sort of struggle a little bit with Delirium, but not too much now since I scaled up defenses a fair bit more. As an overall, build's pretty much where it needs to be. We got nearly 2,800 life, tons of armor, good amounts of offense. It's like an all-rounder middle lane build. There are way better builds out there, but it's a bit of fun, and if you wanted to apply the concept to something else that you're playing, then by all means. What's my feeling on one-shot bosses? I think that patching that they're going with is moving away from like the one-shot mechanics that people have been playing with, and I feel like that's going to scale out over time, and we're moving into like a power creep part of the early access right now, where they've got to sort of scale it the same way they had to do in Path of Exile 1 to stop the one-shotting, and I think Ubers and the pinnacle level are going to get to that point very soon as well. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. We'll talk about that one tomorrow. But anyway, until next time, don't forget to like and sub to the channel and all the rest of it. And I will see you guys in the next video.